button. Today is October 6th. So, welcome. This is our second class connect. I know it's been a while since we met because we had map testing. So, that's kind of a bummer. Map testing is never fun. And again, because we haven't met in a couple weeks, we've done a lot of stuff. We've covered a lot of things. Excuse me. So, to remind ourselves about what kind of a normal class connect looks like or what are we going to do, we're going to start by going over Schoology, just reviewing. This time we'll actually review a couple weeks, but usually it would just be this week. And then we're going to kind of talk about the stuff that we did for this week. We'll do a little bit of review, a little bit of practice, and then we will move on. So again, these go super fast. There's a lot of things we can do. Remember, if you have questions or you need help, please, please, please ask. Especially in online school, it's super important that you can ask questions and you can advocate for yourself so that I know what I can do to help. All right, let me share my screen. Sweet. Okay, here's Schoology. And again, we haven't met since the first week. So we covered a few things. We finished up week 1 last week. Okay, so again, if you've taken that test, you know that was a lot about integers, positive and negative integers. So, and we can maybe review a little bit of that stuff. And then we started week 2. Okay, so now we're in this week, and we're going to talk about adding and subtracting, negative integers, multiplying, dividing, graphing inequalities, and solving inequalities. So we'll do that type of review. Oh, that was not even last week. That was the week before. And then this week, okay, so again, that's what we're going to get into here. It's just been so long since we've met. Okay, so this is what we've got for this week. Couple assignments and some IXL. Remember, if you have problems with IXL, you got to let me know. You got to ask. I really like IXL, so it's something that we're going to use throughout the rest of the year. I think it's great practice, and it's cool that it shows you kind of what you need to do if you want to see an example problem or something like that. All right, so make sure you've got something to write with. Make sure that you are got something to write with and a piece of paper and that you're ready to go. We're going to go through some examples. Okay, let's see here. Hit this. And class connects. All right. So let's talk about adding and subtracting integers. So kind of how it works is that we've got to determine if it's positive or negative. So again, if I say 5 plus negative 2, that's really like saying I have 5 and I'm adding negative 2. That's really like taking away. So adding a negative number is really just like subtracting. Now you might say, well, what if I had, you know, numbers like more negatives than positives? That's fine. If you take 5 plus negative 7, again, that's like I have 5, someone's taking 7. I have $5 and someone's taking $7, or I spent $7. That's really like saying, hey, I actually owe someone $2. I have negative $2 because again, when we add like that, when we add a negative number, it's really like subtracting. All right, let's keep going. What if you have like the negative number out front? So it's like, hey, what if we have negative 3 minus 3. Okay, so let's think about that. I have negative 3. I owe someone $3 to begin with, and then I borrowed $3 more. I now owe them negative $6. So when we subtract a negative number like this, we think about it as adding the opposite. So negative 3 plus negative 3 equals negative 6. So I like to talk about negative numbers like this as either in money or in temperature. So think about it this way. If it was negative 3 degrees to start and it got 3 degrees colder, I'm taking away degrees, negative 3 minus 3, it's actually negative 6 degrees. And again, if we think about how a number line works, if I have, all right, I'm starting at negative 3 and it's going to get 3 degrees colder, I need to move further away from 0. Okay, I need to move further away from 0 to get an answer of negative 6. So when we subtract numbers, maybe we'll do one more quick example here. When we subtract numbers, let's say negative 5 minus 10, we have to add the opposite because, again, we're going more negative. We're getting further away from 0. It's getting colder. We're owing more money, if you want to think about it like that. And then the other kind of goofy example or different example is when we have, let's say, negative 4 minus negative 8. And when we have two negatives, so I have a negative here and a negative here, when we subtract a negative, it's kind of hard to think about. It's like, hey, I'm taking away something that's already negative. I actually cancel these out. So a negative subtracting a negative, I like to call it a super plus or like a super plus. Yeah. So these two negatives cancel out and it actually just turns into a positive. So negative 4 minus negative 8 is really like saying negative 4 plus 8, and that's going to equal positive 4. Okay. Negative minus a negative is a subtracting a negative is really like adding. So these two cancel out and I have to end up adding. Similar for when we multiply and divide, but there's kind of like a couple extra rules, okay? So when we multiply and divide, things are a little bit different. All right? So basically, multiplying and dividing, the two rules work together. So if you have the same things, if I take a positive times a positive, it's going to equal a positive. And if I take a negative times a negative, those two negatives are going to equal or they're going to cancel out, and I'm going to be left with a positive. But if you ever have two numbers that are different, so say one positive and one negative, that's going to equal a negative. Or if you have a negative first multiplied by a positive, that's still going to equal a negative. Does anyone remember how did Mr. Larson describe this in the video? There was like a special way I kind of described it. Does anyone remember? We talked about smiley faces. Yeah. So a positive has two happy people. They're going to stay positive. They're going to stay happy. A negative, both people are sad, but because they're sad together, they're actually going to turn happy. Whereas when we've got one happy person and one sad person in a room, they're not going to get along. So they're going to stay sad. And that's the same way. Again, we have one happy and one sad. So they're going to stay like that. So again, it's normal multiplication, it's normal addition. it's normal division. It's just we have a couple extra rules. So if I did 4 times -2, again, that's a positive times a negative. 4 times 2 is 8, but it's going to equal a -8. If I did -3 times -4, again, negative times a negative equals a +12. All right. So again, this is something that we have to remember right here, but it's something that's new. So again, we got to make sure that we practice it so that in order to remember it, we got to kind of ingrain it into our memory. Then we talked about graphing inequalities. So I've graded some of your assignments, and let me just say it's very clear to me who is watching the videos and who's not. Because those of us that are not watching the videos, you're answering these questions very wrong. Okay. So an inequality means that we have either a greater than or a less than symbol. Okay, remember it always opens to the bigger number. So if you want to think about it like teeth, or if you want to think about it like a Pac-Man, it's going to eat the bigger number. So how we graph inequalities is we have to do something called shading. Okay, because there is a range of numbers here that our answer could be. Our answer could be a lot of different numbers. So this says 3 is greater than X. Okay. Now, if it does not have an equal sign, I use an open circle, which means it cannot equal 3. Open circle means cannot equal 3. And because X is smaller than 3, I got to create an arrow that goes away from 3. So 2 is smaller than 3. 1 is smaller than 3. So I get a range of values. Any number that's smaller than 3 could be my answer. It could be -5. It could be 2. It could be 1.333333. It doesn't matter. All of those numbers would work. And so when we get, let's say, -2 is less than or equal to y. Now, again, notice the difference. Here, I did not have an equal sign. Here I do. So when we have that line underneath that equal sign, that tells us that we need to use a closed circle. Okay. So I'm going to go to -2. I'm going to create a closed circle. So this is an open circle. This is a closed circle because it can equal 2. 2 is a valid solution, which is why we use the closed. And because y is bigger, I'm going to go -1 is bigger than -2. 0 is bigger than -2. All of the positive numbers are bigger than -2. And then the last thing, again, and I'm going to get you guys some practice in a second, is we solved inequalities. You solve inequalities exactly like you would a normal problem. So again, we're going to separate the left and the right side. We're going to subtract 4 and get an answer of x is less than or equal to 2. However, if you get a situation where it looks like this, let's say -4x is greater than 16. All right. The difference is when you divide or multiply by a negative. So again, see how this is a negative? When I divide or multiply by a negative, I need to flip my sign. So -4 divided by -4 cancels out. I'm left with just x, but I gotta flip my inequality sign, and +16 divided by -4 equals -4. Remember, a positive divided by a negative is always a negative. So they're very similar to solving equations. The one extra thing is you got to pay attention to, hey, if I divide a negative number, I have to flip my inequality sign. That's the difference. And that's a special rule that we have to remember. Because if we think about it, hey, our number's actually getting smaller on the other side. I gotta account for that by flipping my sign. All right, let me get this link pulled up. Okay, let's see here. 7th grade, solve and graph inequalities. Let's get you guys some practice. Let's say maybe about 5 or 6 minutes. Sounds about right. Okay. Gonna put the link in the chat. Go ahead, click that link that's in the chat, and then we will get started. All right, I'm gonna turn that off. Let's see here. All right, and if you're watching the recording, I'm just gonna scroll through some of the questions. Again, pause the screen and try it on your own, okay? Pause the screen and try it on your own. If you're still joining, go ahead and join. You can still join. Click that link in the chat. Remember those special rules that we talked about. You got to know about solving inequalities, when to flip the sign, what's the difference between an open circle and a closed circle. Oh no. All right, let's go about 4 more minutes of this practice. So again, try your best, try on your own. Let's go about 4 more minutes. Every time I click the screen, that noise keeps coming. All right. Well, just looking at some of our answers, okay, I think this is something that we're going to need to keep practicing. I know that it's new, but again, this is not an easy thing. But we gotta watch those videos. Again, that's going to be the most important thing. That's how you learn. If you don't watch the videos and you just try the assignments, you're going to say, well, I don't know how to do this. I'm just going to guess. And that's not going to be helpful. Okay, that's not going to help us. All right, go ahead, finish the question that you're on, take a guess. We're going to wrap this up and talk about our Class Connect assignment. So, remember, all of us have to do the assignment, okay? It's not just if you're here, okay? So, everybody in this meeting right now needs to do this right now. So, I'm going to show you how to do it. I'm going to show you where to go. And then when we leave, I need you to follow through and do it. So, again, if we go to our Schoology page and I look at the first folder, Class Connect assignments, I'm going to publish it so you can get to it. And the question goes, solve and graph the inequality. 7n minus 1 is greater than 76. So my first thing that I need to do is add 1 on both sides, and I'm going to get 7n is greater than 77. And then I'm going to say, okay, to get n by itself, I need to divide by 7. So 77 divided by 7 equals 11. And because I did not have a negative there, I did not multiply or divide by a negative, it's going to stay the same. The inequality stays the same. And because it doesn't have that line underneath, which means equal to, I know that it's an open circle. So n is bigger than 11. N is greater than 11, which is how this is showing. 12 is bigger than 11. 13 is bigger than 11. So I'm going to choose C. Okay. That's your Class Connect assignment. Again, I know this stuff can be tricky. I know it can be hard. That's why it's super important to practice and continue to participate and stay engaged so that we don't fall behind. Let me know if you have any other questions. Okay, I'd be happy to meet with you if we want to meet this afternoon or Friday. Other than that, have a great rest of your day. If I don't hear from you, have a great weekend. And we will have a Class Connect next week. So again, hopefully we'll get a few more people, but be ready for a Class Connect next week.